from the cosmic horror. The stars are right once again, and the great old ones announced to talk about for 30 plus minutes H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer who is a genre unto himself. I'm your cosmic host, Mark Griffin, executive of the Lovecraft estate on Yaga, joined in by two from the material world, David Guffey, a professor at Mispatonic University, and Richard Wilson, who is ready to do the Cthulhu Boogie. Today, our guest is from all the way from Mario, England, Darcy Sullivan, a.k.a. the Arkham Hillbilly. Thank you for coming on.
Howdy, it's great to be here, guys.
Awesome. Good to have you.
Yes, and so you describe yourself as creating Eldritch country songs. What exactly is that?
Eldritch country music. Well, it's a genre that I think I pioneered, and I can understand why nobody tried to do it before. Because when it started happening and when I started performing country music about Lovecraftian themes, I realized that, there's a big crossover between Lovecraft and, say, heavy metal, right? There's lots of heavy metal bands that have sort of dark, nihilistic songs about the void and, Cthulhu and that kind of thing. And of course, there was a sort of psychedelic band in the 60s called H.P. Lovecraft. But nobody really tried to do country music about Lovecraftian stuff. And after I started doing it, I realized the reason why nobody tried to do it is because if you drew a Venn diagram with like one circle being Lovecraft fans and another circle being country music fans, they'd be orbiting each other. There's really no overlap there at all. So that's why Eldritch country music, I decided, people can make it out of what they will, but it kind of says what it is on the tin.
As far as I can tell, country music was not anything on Lovecraft's radar. Do you feel it's a mistake on his part that he never listened to the music of Jimmy Rogers or the Carter family?
I'm sure he would have loathed it. I'm sure it would have irked him, no doubt. He was not exactly what you would call a man of the people, right? He did fancy himself kind of a sort of a Southern aristocrat or an English aristocrat. And of course, there's a little bit of that rubbed off in the South. But I think in general, he would not have enjoyed country music at all. And one of the reasons might be because we all know that Lovecraft was a racist. And of course, country music, even back then, was drawing from many sources. It wasn't the sort of pure white material that people think of it now. People think, country music, that's for white hicks and that's for, actually it had a lot of Irish influence. It had a lot of African influence. The banjo was an African instrument. So there's a lot of other strains coming through in early country music. And I don't think he would have dug that at all.
I keep imagining that Randolph Carter is a member of the Carter family.
There you go. Yeah, the lost member of the Carter family.
And you claim to be straight out of the Mispatonic Valley. You said you travel west on your sixth string in one hand and a Necronomicon in the other. And you're telling me about your band, the Nashville Shamblers.
The Nashville Shamblers. Well, I decided that, there's no like one man country. If you do one man country music, you're basically doing folk music, right? So you got to have a band. So I made up a band called the Nashville Shamblers, which is a play on an actual band that existed called the Nashville Ramblers. I did not think about this for more than about 2 seconds before I decided that was going to be the band's name. And I doubt very many people even get the reference. There are quite a few references in my songs and in my lyrics that are not purely Lovecraftian, and I think the people that really like Lovecraft, it just sort of passes them by.
And I noticed that you play at the Grand Old Ones Opry.
Yes, the Grand Old Ones Opry. Well, that's where all the top, country musicians from, Kingsport and Innsmouth and Arkham, if you get to the top, you're in the Grand Old Ones Opry, I should clarify that for those of you who are curious, this whole thing came about at the start of the pandemic. So there is no band really. There's no, all the things are sort of made up, but I have got people that collaborate with me. So they're sort of de facto members of the Nashville Shamblers.
Well, I've seen people like perform with you, like, doing guitars and singing with you and stuff like that. So you do have a little bit of a band.
I do. The people that I've performed live with to date are my children. And their names in the band are JT and Leroy. And as far as I know, oh, there's one person that I've told this to who said, oh, you mean like JT Leroy? JT Leroy, the hoax author from, I guess, the 90s, maybe the early 2000s. There's both a documentary about this famous literary hoax, and there was a movie with Kristen Stewart in it also about JT Leroy. But I just thought JT and Leroy sounded like great country, music names, right? So my son is JT and my daughter is Leroy.
I know who you're talking about, JT Leroy. I didn't put the two and two together right
there. You go.
All that. What about Matt Redman? Is he related to you?
Matt Redman is an actual person, so he, so when I started doing this music, first it just started as a joke. And then I wrote a song that I thought, this is a bluegrass number, in sort of style. It was kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies theme, for those people that know that. And it was a ballad, right? It's a song story. And it was about Charlie Ward, which we would all call Charles Dexter Ward, but I figure, down in the Miskatonic Valley, it'd be called Charlie Ward, right? And I thought, well, who do I know? I don't know anybody who plays the banjo. And you really need like a banjo and a mandolin to make proper bluegrass music. So I asked my friend Clayton, who runs a club in London called the Candlelight Club, and he has musicians come and, paid musicians that perform. And I said, do you know anybody who plays the banjo? And he goes, yeah, I know a couple of people, but one of them is this guy, Matt Redman. And Matt Redman plays basically everything that has a string on it. You could put a string on a tin can. He could make beautiful music with it. And he actually performs in sort of a duo with a woman named Patricia Hammond. And the connection here to the broader sort of weird fiction universe is, if you ever watch any of the videos, not the performance videos, but the documentary videos done by a fellow named Robert Lloyd Perry. And Robert Lloyd Perry performs as M.R. James, the famous English ghostwriter. And so he performs as him, but he's also done a couple documentaries. And in the documentaries, at least one of them, you can hear Patricia singing. She's a trained operatic singer, but she also sings popular music and all kinds of things. And so Matt and Patricia perform together. They do something called Living Room Requests, which is online. It's a pandemic project. But anyway, Matt can play anything. So I got in touch with him, and Matt plays guitar, and he plays banjo, he plays mandolin, he can play anything. So he often will play on my records. And there's another fellow named Martin Wheatley who also performs on some of my records.
Yeah. They've also, I guess, like that living room recording, they've also done one of your songs in their program.
They did. They did do Tentacles and Tumbleweeds. And I've written a song for Patricia to sing that's not an H.P. Lovecraft song, that's called Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Darling, which you will probably recognize as the most famous story by M.R. James, Whistle and I'll Come to You. And it's a music hall number. We haven't done it yet, but it's also in the weird fiction genre, but not Lovecraft.
And Lovecraft greatly admired M.R. James, and
he did indeed.
And M.R. James was aware of Lovecraft, but he didn't seem too impressed by him.
No, I think M.R. James was very English in the way that he wrote, very subtle. His stories are also a bit formulaic. I like M.R. James a lot. My son is a huge M.R. James fan. I think too many of M.R. James's stories are along the lines of, don't touch that, and then the guy goes and touches it, and oh, we told you not to touch that. There's sort of spectral police stories, right? Like don't do the thing you're not supposed to. Oh, you did it. Okay, now we have to punish you.
Yeah. There was one story that he did that I really liked. I can't remember the title. Maybe called The Dollhouse. One was like about a haunted dollhouse where they witnessed events going on in it. Reenacted like a murder that happened in real life.
Yeah, he was big on sort of echoes of the past coming through into the modern life, and a lot of his stories have that. I don't know if you guys watch it out there, but Mark Gatiss from League of Gentlemen and Sherlock and Doctor Who and many other things has been making a series of ghost stories for Christmas. And this year we're getting Count Magnus, which is everybody agrees is one of the best M.R. James stories. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's talk about some of your music and all that. The Cthulhu Boogie.
The Cthulhu Boogie. Yeah. Cthulhu Boogie kind of just threw itself together. I really wanted to do a sort of rockabilly style number. I'm not that talented of a guitarist, but I thought, well, Matt is, so Matt can make this into like a rockabilly song. And when I started doing the songs, the first couple, it was just me. And then when I got Matt involved, my friend Clayton, who had introduced us, said, you really need somebody to produce these and put together these different layers so it sounds, well, let's say good. Because I was using Audacity, which is a sort of a homegrown thing, and I'm not a musician, so I wasn't doing the best job of it. And Clayton started producing, and when he came in, that really changed everything. One of the things that he and Matt both said is you have to play to a rhythm track. You know, you can't just do what you do when you sit around the house and grab your guitar and just play. You have to play to an even beat so that other people can collaborate and everything. But that was one of the songs I thought, well, let's do like a really up-tempo rockin' number, the Cthulhu Boogie, which has lots of references in it, including a couple of my favorite authors are in there. Ramsey Campbell's in there, Joe Lansdale's in there, and S.T. Joshi, because, you know, you got to, if you're going to do Lovecraft stuff, you got to nod to S.T. Joshi at some point.
Has Josie heard it?
I think he has, because I sent him the link, and I think he listened to it. I had his address because I once wrote something for Weird Fiction Review, so which he edits for Centipede Press.
I love some of your lines in there. It's like everybody hopping to a brand new dance. It's the Elbridge craze from Raleigh to France. Everybody's hopping to a brand new dance. Shake like a shog up and give it a chance.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, you know, it's got to have fun. I figured, you know, it's a little bit like after the first wave of Universal horror movies back in the 30s, they started making these House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein. They started getting everybody together, right? And then eventually you get into sort of parody territory with like Mad Monster Party, the film from the late 60s. And in the late 50s, there was this huge horror boom, which you guys probably know all about. And it coincided with Shock Theater, which was when they released all the old Universal horror films and a bunch of other horror films as a package for syndication into television, right? And that happened in the 50s. And so all these films started showing up on television. And so teenagers are watching them, kids are watching them. So there was this huge boom, and it really sort of ignited the whole monster kid phenomenon. And one of the things that happened was rock and roll was taking off at the same time. So once something like Monster Mash takes off, or Sheb Woolley with, you know, Purple People Eater, that kind of thing. When these songs started to be hits, everybody who was in like any kind of rockabilly band thought, oh, we can do that. So there was this huge wave of rock and roll monster songs, which have been now collected on CDs and things, which are fascinating. And a common theme in all of them, or in many of them, is the monsters all get together and they have a party. You know, there's a monster party. There's a party going on at the monster house. Everybody was there. Frankenstein, Wolfman, and Dracula, old lady in a rocking chair, you know, which is from Psycho. So they got, I love this genre of everybody just gets together, all the monsters just get together and have a party.
The werewolf bar mitzvah from the 30 Rock episode.
Yeah. You say you're not a musician. What do you mean by that?
I'm not a good musician. I play rudimentary acoustic guitar, and I do have a banjo now. To everybody's regret, the Arkham Hillbilly has a banjo and has touched the strings. I've never really been a good guitar player. I never learned. I did take lessons in the beginning, but things that every guitar player takes for granted, I find really difficult, like bar chords. I find things like bar chords hard, and I can hear every guitarist, in America, just go, oh my God. But I just find those things kind of difficult. But I can bash out a tune, so that's it. And then I get people that can actually play music like Matt Redmond to make it sound good.
So before doing the Arkham Hillbilly, were you doing any music, before that?
Nope, not at all. Nothing. I mean, I played guitar at home and I, played songs. I didn't write songs. I didn't play in bands. I didn't do any of that stuff.
So you just decide out of the blue because the COVID, just make, Cthulhu music?
Well, I'll tell you the origin. Should I tell you the origin of the Arkham Hillbilly?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm sure you guys are familiar with obviously all the Cthulhu role-playing games and everything. Mm-hmm. There's a guy in England named Paul St. John McIntosh, and he created a game called Casting the Runes, which is based on M.R. James, and you guys may have heard of that or not. I met him at a FantasyCon convention about 4 years ago, and I was just there as an attendee and to see some of my friends. And I was sitting down in the lobby and I was having a Diet Coke, and this guy that I'd never seen comes up, he sort of passes me, and then he looks back at me like he recognizes me. And he comes over and he says in an English accent, I didn't really understand the material. I didn't understand the point of it that well before. But now that I see the illustrations, I'm really starting to understand. I think they're very clever. They're very good illustrations. And I'm thinking, who does he think I am? Because obviously he wasn't talking about me. And he said a couple more things about the illustrations, and I realized who he had me confused with. And I said, I think you think I'm Reggie Oliver. And he went, oh my. Oh, yes. Sorry, that's okay. I said, Reggie Oliver is one of my favorite weird fiction authors, current weird fiction authors. And I'd actually met Reggie Oliver at a Ghost Story Festival that was put on about 5 years ago by Swan River Press in Dublin. And he's a fantastic author if anybody wants to check him out. Most of his work these days is being published by Tartarus Press in the UK. And I was kind of honored because I was being mistaken for somebody that I really hold in high regard. And, we don't really look that much alike, but we're both kind of tall and, silver hair and, roughly the same age. So anyway, that's how I met him. And that's how I knew Paul St. John McIntosh was. And then somehow we became Facebook friends. And I had posted in February 2020, I went out and I went to this vintage store and I bought this awesome country jacket with, fringe and the whole deal, leather. And, I thought it was beautiful. So I took a picture of me with it and I posted it. And Paul St. John McIntosh responded to my post and said, straight out of Down Darker Trails. I didn't know what that was. I had to Google that. It's a sort of a weird Western gameplay based on the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. And so I said, Nyarlathotep ain't so bad once you get a few beers in him, but that daggone is a doggone nuisance. And Paul said, doggone. And I said, reminds me of a song my pappy used to sing, because I just thought, okay, doggone, daggone, I can hear it, right? So I just wrote like the first verse of doggone it, daggone, and put it in the post. And that was the key, because then once I did that, I thought, oh, well, actually, I'll just get the guitar and I'll just sing that, which I did. And, it was just a reply on a post. That's how it all got started. And then I started thinking of more songs and I came up with the name The Arkham Hillbilly. For a long time, I did not record Doggone It Daggone. And the reason I gave for not recording it was, of course, and I'll slip in my Arkham Hillbilly voice, because them fellas down at the Esoteric Order, daggone, they just hate that song. I mean, they just hate that song. So I didn't record it for a long time, and then finally I did. But that's how it got started. And then I just started thinking of songs and thinking of more songs about H.P. Lovecraft that had a country beat and were sort of Western flavored. And that's how it all got started.
Yeah, but why Lovecraft? Why not like M.R. James or something like that?
I don't know M.R. James' oeuvre as well as I know Lovecraft's, perhaps. It was just because of that doggone daggone. That was it. That was the whole thing right there. Doggone it, daggone. And yeah, it was a weird thing. But it was also, if you think February 2020 was right before the pandemic. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I used to have things I would do like every weekend, when I wasn't at work. I would go like do things. And as of March, I think it was like 17 or 23, 2020, you could not leave the house in the UK, right? You could leave the house to exercise or to get medicine or food or something like that. But you couldn't, there were no restaurants, nothing was open. You couldn't go to a store, nothing, you were just shut in basically. And so it was sort of a fertile time to be playing around with something new and writing songs.
So you just took the plunge and just went into it?
I just went into it, and then it kind of solidified and it turned into a regular thing. And I would spend hours every weekend, hours and hours, either writing songs or trying to figure out what the music was like, or trying to play it into a rhythm track, which I found really difficult in this software program so that other people could work on them. And then doing the videos. Because every song I thought, well, it's cute, but who's going to listen to the whole thing if there's no images? So I would do videos for every song, and that took quite a while too.
Now, you're like the Ballad of Charlie Ward. You did a really good job of recapping, that story. Did you reread the story, or did you just go by what you remembered of it?
No, I had to reread the case of Charles Dexter Ward. I have multiple editions of Lovecraft. The ones I was mainly using were PS Publishing put out a bunch of editions, roughly 3 or 4 years ago, that were a single story with a couple of essays on it, illustrations by a guy named Pete Von Schally. And Pete Von Schally does fantastic illustrations. He's done a lot of work in films, and he's a very funny guy too. So I just love those little PS Publishing editions. So I would go back, I'd read the story, and then go, okay, how do I tell this story in bluegrass terms?
I think one of my favorite little parts about that song was that you made the reference about salt.
Yeah, just a pinch of salt. And then I had, for the image of that, I go, well, I got to have the woman on the the girl on the Morton salt, canisters, right? Which everybody knows, at least in the US, everybody, Morton salt. When it rains, it pours. Little girl with the umbrella.
So going to another song, The Call. One line I really like was, "It's the call of Cthulhu, the connection always sucks. There's a roar like engines of a dozen Chevy trucks, but he still thinks you can hear him fine above the caterwaul." That's another fun thing about The Call.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking of that when you get that call that you really don't want to get, but you got to take it anyway. Like maybe it's your boss, and then your boss is calling from the road or an airplane or something like that, and you can hardly hear them, but they just keep going, telling you what you got to do, right? I figured that's probably what it's like when you hear the call of Cthulhu. You're probably doing something else. You're eating dinner, you're in the shower, or whatever, but you got to take that call.
You pronounce his name very differently in that one. I guess you countrify his name.
I have been criticized for this. I have been told, somebody commented and said, "Oh, it's a nice song, but you pronounce Cthulhu wrong." Because I think most people say Cthulhu, right?
If you talk to Josie, it's Clulu, but I think it's more guttural. It'd be like Clulu, you say it that way. But
right, it's a name not meant for human tongues.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're correcting my pronunciation on a name not meant for human tongues. So I do say Cthulhu, which is probably no better than anything else, but I don't know.
I think it works for the song. I really like it. To me, it just adds a nice touch. It makes it like almost like a countrified version. It's like a Big Brother or something. Is there?
Yeah. Some of the names are Nyarlathotep. I figure that's pretty straightforward, right? It's almost like phonetically spelled when you see Dagon. Yeah, you know how to say that. There's one. Shub, and I'm not going to say the second part, that I've tried to put into a song, and I thought, no, I can't say that.
Can't do that.
No, you can't do that one.
We've had a discussion about that name, like Richard said. It's one of those weird ones.
No, and you have to wonder if it was intentional, given how racist Lovecraft was, and isn't it the goat of 1,000 young, correct?
Yeah.
Something like, yeah. So like the whole idea of people coming in and, migrants coming into the country, which of course is still a thing that people worry about today in the US and the UK and everywhere else. You have to wonder if there was a connection there, but who knows?
It's always hard to tell with Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Now, would you be able to play the call for us right now?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Would you be able to play the call for us right now?
Sure. And since you guys are recording this, you'll be able to cut stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're nodding like we never thought of that. Just because I have to now like print it out. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, we'll
See. You're out. You're giving me requests, which is great. Call of Cthulhu.
Sorry, what was that?
I said it's like requests. It's like request time. So here we go. Yeah, I figured this one. It's like the phrase that people know, right? If they know anything about Lovecraft, they know Cthulhu, or they know the Call of Cthulhu because of the board, the RPG. Okay. Nothing's printing. Hold on a sec. Try that again. Just give me a second here. And while we're waiting for the printout, let me just see how the sound comes through you, so you guys can tell me how. Can you hear the guitar okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, good. Now I gotta figure out what key I play it in. Don't ask me for my number, I don't give it out no more. My friends ask me what I even have a cell phone for. I don't call no one, and not a single person can call me. That's why every time it rings, I know just who it's gonna be. It's the call of Cthulhu, and the time is never right. You're either heaven or it's the middle of the night. You can leave your phone on silent, but what?
You're getting distorted.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe it might be too loud, so let me push the mic back a little bit.
You're getting too distorted.
Okay. It might also be that I have to fiddle with these dials a bit. Let me see if that helps. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of the chorus, and you guys tell me if it's still distorted. Is that better?
No.
No, not better. Okay. Let's see here. I'm gonna. Which one's? Okay. I will back up a little bit and see if that helps. Hold on.
The fun of being live.
Hold on a second. It's the call of Cthulhu. Okay. All right. I'll start that one over again.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go with the call of Cthulhu. Don't ask me for my number, I don't give it out no more. My friends ask me would I even have a cell phone for. I don't call no one, and not a single person can call me. That's why every time it rings, I know just who it's gonna be. It's the call of Cthulhu and the time is never right. You're either having dinner or it's the middle of the night. You can leave your phone on silent, that don't matter, not at all. You'll still know it when you get the call. Folks ask me what's the matter, you expecting bad news. You look like you bet your life and you found out you're gonna lose. I don't tell them what's the matter, hell, I don't even know how. I just say I'm sorry, but I gotta take this call right now. It's the call of Cthulhu, the connection always sucks. There's a roar like the engines of a dozen Chevy trucks. But he still thinks you can hear him fine above the ghetto wall. That's another fun thing about the call. Sometimes I think he's telling me start some kind of church, but he might just be complaining about all the bootleg merch. Sometimes when he's been drinking, he'll sing ukulele. Sometimes he just hangs up because he butt dialed me. It's the call of Cthulhu and it has its own ringtone that sounds like Waylon Jennings has just swallowed your phone. You can get a new provider, you can throw it at the wall, but you still are gonna get the call. You are always gonna get the call. It's the call of Cthulhu and it might just last all day. And the charges are expensive on collect calls from you. You can tell him that you're driving or you're in the shower stall. He's still gonna make you take the call. Yeah, you always gotta take the call.
So had you done songwriting before? You just started like just
I had not. Oh, I'd written a couple songs. But my main job is like marketing stuff, and so I've always been a freelance writer on the side. So
having a hard time hearing you now.
Oh, okay, because I turned over the dials down.
Audio.
Yes.
Yeah, we just messed
Okay.
everything up.
Yeah.
Okay, is that better?
That's
Yes,
better.
that's good.
Yes.
Okay, let me start that answer again. I'd written a couple of songs, but not very much. I do writing for a job. I'm a marketing person, so not like an author or anything. I've written a lot of freelance articles, and I used to be a regular writer for the Comics Journal. So I've done a lot of writing in various kinds, but not really songwriting.
And I've noticed that when you're in the Arkham Hillbilly, your accent changes. Was that
Yeah,
intentional?
That isn't. I figure Arkham Hillbilly sounds something like this. Now I'm probably doing a terrible accent, and all the people down in the South can blame me for that. I apologize, but when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, I really liked some of the rural comedies that were on then, like the Beverly Hillbillies and Green Acres. I bet you guys can remember at least a couple of those.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them weren't very good. I thought Beverly Hillbillies was really funny. I thought Green Acres, I still think Green Acres was a classic. And I just love that style of humor and the sort of easygoing nature of it. And also I think, especially with Green Acres, there was a lot of wit there. And if anybody still watches Green Acres like I do, and you see it on reruns, next time you're watching Green Acres, watch how often Oliver is interrupted. Watch how infrequently he gets to finish a sentence when he's talking to somebody. It's just an interesting like thing that they've worked into it. That the city slicker, of course, was always getting the better of by the country people.
Okay. Let's see. Another song that you've done was like "You Had Me at Cthulhu." You call it a weird romance western swing song.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a nice idea that, you meet a gal, she's kind of attractive. She tells you, come with me, let's do this arcane ritual. Maybe the world gets destroyed in the process, but she's kind of cute, so you kind of go with it.
And, another one was called "I Was Gone." You call it a tentacle tapper of someone who avoided being sacrificed.
That's right. Yeah. So I figure if you actually live down there, in Miskatonic Valley around Arkham, or anything, there's some pretty weird stuff going on all the time. You kind of got to be on your toes. You got to be able to watch the signals. It's kind of like if you're in New York, when you go to New York and you're like, I got to be a little bit more careful than I may be in my hometown, just in case, somebody's going to bug me or something like that. I figure like if you're in, in those places, you got to watch for the signs.
And then there's a way down in Dunwich, which leads me to ask you a question. Since you live in Britain, do you pronounce it Dunwich or Dunwich?
They would say Dunwich. Isn't that crazy? Obviously it's not, but they would say, but they don't say Sandwich. So, there's rules. There's rules to what you can say, but yeah, they would probably say Dunwich, but no, it's obviously Dunwich. That one's my wife's favorite song of all the Arkham Hillbilly numbers.
Okay, so she's a fan too of them, or just that one song?
Just that one song. No, no, I think she likes it. I think she appreciates it. She has fun with it, and we did one live concert so far, and we did one live stream from the Innsmouth Jamboree back in I think that was actually in 2020. My daughter and I did a bunch of songs that we pretended were at the Innsmouth Jamboree, because I figured they gotta be in Innsmouth. It's a port town, there's probably like a giant festival there every year with music and stuff and banjos and fiddles and food, and it's probably a good time.
Then sacrifices after dark.
Sacrifice. You don't want to stay at the Innsmouth Jamboree after dark. There's an after dark component of it. Innsmouth After Dark is what it's called. You don't want to be around for that. So, just make your exit after like the daytime stuff.
And at the time we're recording this, Christmas isn't come yet. By the time it get airs, it'll be after Christmas. But I guess you've done some Christmas songs.
I've done 2 Christmas songs. So I did a Miskatonic Christmas, and I have to say that one of the things when you're a professional songwriter, which I am not, but when you try to write songs, and it's all about the words and it's all about the rhythm, and so when I thought, oh, I should do a Christmas song. And I was just thinking of it, and you hear Miskatonic Christmas, and that works, right? You hear the C ending for Miskatonic, and it's rolling right into the Christmas, and you can hear there's accents on Miskatonic, but the ton is the major accent in that word, and then Christmas. So you can hear the sort of the emphasis of that phrase, Miskatonic Christmas. You get into that rhythm, and it does a lot of the songwriting for you, actually.
Yeah, so the song just wrote itself then.
Yeah, and then I did one last year, which I think Clayton, my producer, still hasn't forgiven me for, because I thought I'm not going to do one this year. I'm just gonna, I'll do what everybody does, right? At Christmas time, you play the Christmas songs that have already been hits, not the Miskatonic Christmas was a hit, but it was in the can. So I would just push it out there again, make people listen to it again. And then I thought, Krampus. Damn, there should be a Krampus song. So I'm sure there are many Krampus songs. So I wrote Krampus Time. And I think we did that about 2 weeks two weeks before Christmas, which to be fair is after Krampusnacht, which is in early December. But I thought, oh, we should get this out for Christmas. And my part was easy, that was like, an hour or something. And then another hour to do my daughter, who did all the backup vocals. My daughter is a trained operatic singer, so she has a fantastic voice. And then go, okay, here, Clayton, like put all the instruments on here, because all the instruments are sampled. We've never gotten together with an actual band other than when we pay like Matt or Martin to do a guitar part. So it's all stuff that Clayton comes up with samples and things like that, and he's really good at it. But I didn't give him very much time to turn out Krampus time, but he did a great job.
That's definitely one of my favorites. It's very catchy.
It's really good.
Yeah.
You guys Krampus fans?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Have you seen Rare Exports?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I'm trying to make that our new Christmas movie, because our Christmas movie for the last 10 years has been The Shining. And I did not pick this. My kids decided that The Shining was our Christmas movie. So every Christmas we watch The Shining. And one year we left it too late and we had to like watch it on Christmas Eve while we were wrapping presents. We were watching The Shining in the background. But we watched Rare Exports this year and last year. So it may not have the staying power of The Shining, but I think it's a really good Christmas movie.
I never thought of The Shining being a Christmas movie, but I guess I can see that. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, there's snow. There's a hell of a lot of snow. That's about it. I think that's the snow and being cut off from everybody and being trapped with your family. Actually, the more you think about it, the more Christmassy it seems.
Have you ever seen the documentary? I think it's called Room 237.
We love that movie. We love that movie, and the endless debates about, is this Kubrick planting a sign that actually this movie is about World War II or about the extermination of the Native Americans or whatever, or is it just a continuity error? Yeah. And some of them are so weird that you think he's such a stickler, and that he hired all sticklers to work on his movies. How did they make this continuity error that seems really, there's the one about what things are on the door to the kid's room when like the doctor comes to see him or something, and you think, wow, how did they miss that? But yeah, I think most of it's continuity errors, but there's some great theories in that film.
Yeah. I think it says more about the fans than it does about Kubrick himself.
Well, yeah, I think there's, when you watch it, what I hear is people saying, I was so affected by this film that there has to be more to it than guy stuck in a remote location goes crazy and tries to kill his family, right? It's like, it's not that original of a horror film idea, it's a really well done movie, but people feel something more than that when they see the film, and they're sort of trying to work out why. What does this resonate with me that's causing this reaction? I think that's why there's so many theories about The Shining.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites is about the physical space of the hotel, saying that it couldn't exist, and they draw.
Oh yeah, and they draw the little map to show behind the manager's office would be more building. You wouldn't be able to see outside that window and see the whatever's out there.
And also the bathroom and everything. It's like, they get really into it.
Yeah. No, we loved Room 237. Maybe that should be our new Christmas movie. After 10 years of The Shining, we'll just every year we'll watch Room 237 and we'll pick a winner. Which of these theories is actually the best theory?
Yeah. Maybe you could alternate, have rotate every year,
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of interested in this film now called Sint, which I think the American version of it was called Saint, which is also about Norwegian Santa Claus, or the original Santa Claus and the dark Santa Claus. And it also came out the same year as Rare Exports. It came out in 2010. And so I've seen there's a book on Yuletide Terrors that's all about horror in Christmas films and Christmas television. And this is one of the films that they talk about. And I think that'll probably be like a couple years. I think we could do just Saint.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of that one.
I haven't. I'm gonna have to look that up.
It's Sint as in Sinterklaas,
Right.
which is the Norwegian, Santa Claus.
All right, going to another song. This one has like a Kentucky reference to it. Won't somebody tell me what Cthulhu Fhtagn means?
Yeah.
Talk about Bill Monroe hires Eric Zan, and now the fellow's a bluegrass man.
There you go, that was sort of just a sort of really straightforward kind of blues type number where the lyrics were more important than the music, and everything in there other than like me and my guitar is like synthesized. It's all like Clayton's work on that. But yeah, that was a fun one. There's two little children lying in bed listen to Abdullah Hazred.
I love your rhyming scheme. How do you work all them together?
Yeah, particularly with the Lovecraftian words that
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's always the hardest part. And also I am a stickler for perfect rhymes. So 40 years ago, a writer friend of mine told me, well, about perfect rhymes, and I'd never heard the phrase, but what it means is what it sounds like, two words that rhyme perfectly that you put into a poem or a song. And this is like a virus. Once you hear that phrase, you're going to be listening for it now, and you're going to realize that almost no popular music has all perfect rhymes. People are rhyming anything with any. I mean, famous on "girl" and "world." Yeah, they sound a little bit alike. That's not a perfect rhyme, right? So I always have to have perfect rhymes, which does make it harder. And it means you have to work things around differently. And I read something recently where somebody was asking somebody who actually can write poems or songs and said, doesn't that rhyming thing, doesn't that like sort of detract from what you're trying to say, right? Because you have to force the words around. And they said, actually, it makes you be more creative because you have to think of different ways to solve this thing. So you come up with different ideas, just trying to figure out how do I get this into a rhythm and a rhyme.
Okay. And going to tentacles and tumbleweeds. I love this one line. I'm not the man I was. In fact, I'm not a man at all.
There you go. That is, I can play that one for you because that is probably the song that people like the best. At least when I say people, I mean my family. They said, okay, that's a good one, right? Like the other ones, they're like, and then I did tentacles and tumbleweeds, and like, okay, that's actually good. So I can play that for you. A lot of the songs, when I think about it, to start with, I think about, well, what genre of music? Because country music isn't just one thing. There's a whole bunch of styles in it. And there's a Swedish band called the Countryside of Harmonica Sam. And I love these guys. I've never seen them live because they never come to the UK, but they play honky tonk music. And they play it straight ahead, very old fashioned sounding. They wear the country outfits and everything. And they're just fantastic. And I was thinking of that style and thinking, well, what would be, I want to write something in that style. And I want, it has to be sort of this combination of country and Lovecraft. And that's when tentacles and tumbleweeds, the phrase, I came up with the phrase, and then the whole song is basically based on that phrase.
All right,
so let me adjust this again and see if how many things I have to twiddle to get it. Maybe it's just the distance thing. So. And for this song, I'm going to use the Bad Musician's Friend, the capo. I actually have a capo that says Arkham Hillbilly on it that my family got made for me.
But that's love there.
Yeah, they actually like it a lot. Obviously, my kids have been performing with me a little bit. So tell me if this distorts or not. We walked at our home, became a ghost town. Okay, I'll start again.
Maybe once, if you can, lean a little bit close to the microphone for your voice.
Okay, yeah, I could do that. You walked out, our home became a ghost town. There's not a living soul for miles around. Just me and my soul died. A million times I cried. You left me with my memories, that old book I found. I searched the Necronomicon for answers. I chanted phrases that made my skin crawl. You said I'd never change, but now I feel so strange. Not the man I was, in fact, not a man at all. Tentacles and tumbleweeds are all you left behind. Tenderness that my heart needs, no, I'll never find. Pact I made to get you back will never set me free. Tumbleweeds and tentacles, that's all that's left for me. Tonight I dream that you are here beside me. You whisper words of love that are so sweet. Waking hope is dead. I slither out of bed. I miss you every day more than miss my hands and feet. Tentacles and tumbleweeds are all you left behind. Tenderness my heart needs, no, I'll never find. York so tough might be the gate, but I can't find the key. Tumbleweeds and tentacles, it's all that's left for me. Where I tried to win your love, as wrong can be. Okay. Shit. Sorry, I screwed up that last bit.
That's okay.
That's fine.
We'll call it the 30+ minutes edit. You know.
Okay, should I do it again? I guess I'll have to do it again. You guys got time?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. That's what happens when you're not on the road, not playing these songs every night, which I never am, so. When you walked out, our home became a ghost town. There's not a living soul for miles around. Just me and my soul died. A million times I cried. You left me with my memories, that old book I found. I searched the Necronomicon for answers. I chanted phrases that made my skin crawl. You said I'd never change, now I feel so strange. Not the man I was, in fact, not a man at all. Tentacles and tumbleweeds are all you left behind. Tenderness that my heart needs, no, I'll never find. Pact I made to get you back will never set me free. Tumbleweeds and tentacles, it's all that's left for me. Tonight I dream that you are here beside me. You whisper words of love that are so sweet. Waking hope is dead. I slither out of bed. I miss you every day more than miss my hands and feet. Tentacles and tumbleweeds are all you left behind. Tenderness that my heart needs, no, I'll never never find. Yogs and tough might be the gate, but I can't find no key. Tumbleweeds and tentacles, it's all that's left for me. Where I tried to win your love, as wrong can be. Tumbleweeds and tentacles, it's all that's left for me. Tumbleweeds and tentacles, it's all that's left for me.
What a lovely song.
Wonderful.
It's purty, ain't it?
That's good.
Purdy.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you got a hit there.
Yeah, you know, I think I hit like #1 in like Kingsport for a week, something, I don't know.
But having a little hard time hearing you.
All right. Better?
Yes. So far.
All right.
Yes. I'll wait. There was another one you did called The Battle of the True West, which almost sounded like a departure from yours because it has almost like the least Lovecraft references in there.
It does have the least Lovecraft references in it. That was an homage to the magazine True West. Any of you fellers read True West?
Yeah, I've seen it a few
I haven't
times.
seen it.
Okay, good. Yeah, True West is a great magazine. It's been around for almost 70 years, and it's edited by a great guy named Bob Bowes-Bell. He's actually the publisher, not the editor. And he is somebody I came across way back in the 1980s because he was a cartoonist doing work for New West, or New Times, which was a sort of a free publication that was given out in Arizona and some other places. Anyway, very funny guy. He did a comic book called Honky Tonk Sue, an independent comic book. And he's a great illustrator and expert on the Old West. And I love that magazine. It's one of the only magazines I actually subscribe to. And I thought I should do a song about True West. Of course, it is Lovecraftian. There are Lovecraftian references in there, but it's mainly about the Old West and True West magazine.
I remember
So it's like a
correctly,
plug.
one of the few articles about Gus Hyatt, who was a train robber in the Clarksville area, which is not too far from us. And he got arrested and put in the jail in Nashville. And he staged a prison break. Somehow he got a hold of dynamite and blew himself out of the Nashville. And then he just disappeared after that. And no one really knows what happened to him. You know.
Gus Hyatt.
Yeah, Gus Hyatt.
All right.
And you make two references in that song to have Logan County significance to where we live in. Wyatt Earp and Jesse James. Wyatt Earp's parents lived in Logan County at one time, and Jesse James is known for robbing a bank here.
Oh, okay. That's great.
So,
You guys like the movie Tombstone? Have you seen the movie Tombstone?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah. And the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, I assume. Yeah. Some great movies. Yeah, we've had discussions. There's a lot of discussions in sort of Western film circles about the fact that Tombstone was made at the same time as the film Wyatt Earp. So it's one of those things like you might remember like many, many years ago, there were two volcano movies being made at the same time in Hollywood, or there were two meteor movies made at the same time in Hollywood. And it just happened that, back then in the early 90s, there were two movies about Wyatt Earp and the whole Tombstone showdown and shootout at the OK Corral being made at the same time. And Kevin Costner was coming off Dances with Wolves. So he could like do anything he wanted. Right. I mean, because that was such a huge success. So he was making the sort of big budget, serious movie, Wyatt Earp, where he was playing Wyatt Earp. And then the other guys, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer and all the people in Tombstone were making a sort of a scrappier, lower budget film. And they were in a race to see if they could get out ahead of Wyatt Earp. And they did get out ahead of Wyatt Earp. And that film is the film that stuck because it's super pacey. Like they made it almost like they were making a B movie Western. It's longer than that, but there's action. The dialogue's very tight. The characters are there's not a lot of, scenes of characters thinking about things. So it's a great film about that era and about Wyatt Earp. And of course, all films like that have historical inaccuracies, but I think that, the fun things like Val Kilmer doing the flipping the mug around instead of the gun and things like that really stick.
Yeah. That's definitely one of Val Kilmer's best roles,
Yeah.
was Doc Holliday.
Oh yeah.
And one final song I want to talk about that you've done is probably the one that disturbs me the most. Take a Lily.
Take a Lily.
Yes. It comes across as being such a wonderful, love, wholesome song and all that. It's quite clear the guy who's like telling the story has no idea what he's getting into.
No idea at all. Somebody actually made a note on the YouTube video that I did for it saying, I don't think the person that wrote the song knows what Tekalili is. And I'm like, well, okay, that's nice that you think that. You kind of got the point of the song, which is the person in the song doesn't know that you don't really want to rush towards the sound Tekalili. That's not something that you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, that's funny. To me, the whole idea of a love song where somebody's hearing Tekalili, which is when you say it, Tekalili, it's sounds very Polynesian, sort of peaceful. It's lyrical. It could be and I had my daughter sing the, lilting Tekalili phrase that you could imagine sort of calling somebody out to sea, to meet the beautiful maiden that they will find out there, not realizing that at the other end of that is probably Shoggoths.
Yeah.
Maybe they're attractive Shoggoths. I never wasn't entirely sure what a Shoggoth looked like, and I guess they can kind of change their shape. So, who knows? Maybe you flip a coin when you're going after a Shoggoth.
Yeah. Maybe they could make themselves look like, very beautiful and attractive.
I assume that would be in their repertoire. They have to have worked on that.
Yeah. So I saw where you had a sponsor for your shows. Give Us Moonshine.
Give Us Moonshine. Yes. Well brewed in Arkham since 1927. And a lot of people think well brewed means it's brewed well. Actually means it's brewed in the well in Arkham. And, we all know what well we're talking about on this show. And that's why the wonderful taste of Give Us Moonshine and the phrase, their slogan is, it's in the water.
There you go. And you also have Eldridge Chaw.
Eldridge Chaw. So yeah, Eldridge Chaw is interesting because a lot of people, when you talk about Eldridge Chaw, when the Arkham Hillbilly talks about Eldridge Chaw, people say, well, what's different about that from the chaw I'm normally chewing? So the difference is that they found like a special ingredient down there in Dudwich Industries that they put in the Eldridge Chaw. And tell you the truth, I don't know what that special ingredient is, and I don't think they do either. But whatever it is, it gives the Eldridge Chaw a special kick. And I've kind of gone off it a little bit on account of I had a kind of a bad experience with Eldridge Chaw, which was I was out pipe bomb fishing with the Nashville Shamblers. And I took a big pinch of Eldridge Chaw. And before I knew it, that chaw was talking to me in my head. And it said that where it came from, I could live forever, which I thought sounded like a pretty good thing. And then it started saying, build me a spaceship. And I'm like, I ain't going to build you no spaceship. And then it was like, do my bidding, puny human. And I'm like, okay, do your own bidding and watch it with the name calling. And then it started telling me that it was from a race that had traveled through eons immemorial. And that's when I spat it out at Leroy. But you do kind of got to be a little bit careful with the Eldridge Chaw. But it is delicious. And so I do recommend next time you go to the Circle K, pick yourself up some Eldridge Chaw, the chaw that chews back.
And there's a Circle K just up the road.
Yeah, there you go.
You can get my CDs. Well, you can't get them in the Circle K. You have to go outside, out and back. That's where they usually have them there.
Yeah. And jumping subjects, getting away from the Arkham Hillbilly, I understand there's a Whistler Society, in your neck of the woods, and they had an online seance where they tried to bring up the artist James Whistler, the artist best known for painting his mother, and many remarked of how James Whistler bears an uncanny resemblance to you.
Yes, he does. So this came about in a very strange way because I'm also the press officer of the Oscar Wilde Society. And there's a fellow in the Oscar Wilde Society named Neil Titley, and he wrote a small play for like 4 actors called Oscar's People. And it was famous people talking about their relationship with Oscar. One of them was Herbert Beerbohm Tree, and one of them was Whistler. And he had somebody to play Wilde, and he had somebody to play the other characters. He didn't have anybody to play Whistler, and he was talking about this with some members of the Oscar Wilde Society. And Vanessa, who's our secretary, said, well, why don't you get Darcy? You know, he's got an American accent. He's got a big mustache, which you can't see in a podcast, but trust me, folks, if you look me up, I got a big mustache. And so he asked me if I would play Whistler. And I said, sure. I thought it was a lot of fun. So I did that. And a couple of people from the Whistler Society saw it. I'm also in the Whistler Society. Whistler was a fascinating guy. He was from Lowell, Massachusetts, although he never talked about that. He said, I did not choose to be born in Lowell. And of course, he was very witty, and he had his sort of conflicts with Oscar Wilde and basically everybody. He was one of those guys that he made friends and then he made enemies. Practically everybody that was ever his friend became his enemy at some point. So they had this idea in the Whistler Society of having a Whistler seance where people from the Whistler Society could give us questions ahead of time, and then I would answer them as James Whistler in a Zoom seance. Because this is another pandemic project. During the pandemic, all these societies that used to get together and have meetings couldn't do that. So they were looking for, how do we engage our members when we can't get together? And so I thought I think it was Joan Harper's idea from the Whistler Society. It was a great idea. So we've done 3 seances now, and all the answers that I say come from a guy called Dan Sutherland, who is the most recent biographer of Whistler. And he also his mother on the painting and the person. And Dan's an expert on Whistler. I am not. I know about Whistler. I've read a lot about Whistler, but I'm not like a super expert. So I'm the actor, if you will, playing Whistler. The weird thing is that when we have these seances, everybody's supposed to pre-submit questions, and then they get called on to ask the questions, and then people will ad-lib questions. Like they really want to find out what Whistler thought about something. I was listening to your interview with the fellow who plays Lovecraft, and was saying about he gets all these questions from people that want to know, what does Lovecraft think of Succession, or what does Lovecraft think of Dungeons and Dragons, things that obviously the real Lovecraft would be baffled by if he suddenly came back to life and encountered these things. But so people will try to ask questions as though I'm somehow actually going to know something about what Whistler would think about these things, and that's when I have to sort of ad lib. But it's a lot of fun, and couldn't do without Dan.
You did really good with that. You do a good job, a convincing job of playing Whistler. And
the hardest part about playing Whistler is getting the monocle to stay in, because I don't know if you guys have ever worn a monocle.
I tried one time.
Yeah, you tried one time. It's not easy. And you see these guys walking around. I suppose in a film, they probably glue it in place. But in real life, how they got them to stay in there so long, wow, I guess it just took a lot of practice. It is kind of tricky.
Muscles in your eye socket up.
Yeah, exactly. There's, and I should probably be using like some antique monocle that would be really cool or something, but actually they're called Monocle Madness, and that's where my monocle is from. So if any of you listeners out there think I need a monocle, Monocle Madness is a pretty good choice, and they didn't pay any of us to say that.
Monocle Madness. I'll have to remember that.
Monocle Madness.
Monocle needs.
Yes, for all your monocle needs. Lovecraft didn't know much about love country music, but he was familiar with James Whistler. He went to the Museum of Modern Art to pay his respects to the Whistler's mother, and then he went to go buy some Whistler mother stamps when they came out for Mother's Day in 1934. And then he went to the Freer Museum in Washington, D.C. and saw the Peacock Room, which is Whistler's other claim to fame.
The Peacock Room is amazing. You guys seen it?
I've seen pictures of it. I've not actually been into it or that.
It's so fascinating. And the story behind the Peacock Room is that the guy whose house it was, Leyland, was a patron of Whistler. So, somebody that would buy Whistler's art. And he had bought this beautiful painting that Whistler had done, and it was in the Peacock Room. But the Peacock Room was not the Peacock Room at the time. It was just a room, and Leyland had hired another artist to decorate the room because Leyland had this huge collection of pottery. And so they had to decorate the room to sort of showcase the pottery and showcase the painting. And this other artist knew Whistler and asked Whistler for some advice on some colors in some part of it. Whistler took this as an opportunity to completely redo the entire room, design it all, paint the whole thing, he painted over these expensive Spanish leather wall hangings that Leyland had in the room. So he just did this amazing work of art, and which Leyland didn't know anything about. He was away, traveling at the time that the work on the room was being done. And he wasn't too happy that not only was it done without his permission, but that Whistler actually had like press viewings, of it in before Leyland even got back and saw it. So when Leyland got back, he wasn't too happy about this, and he refused to pay Whistler the amount that Whistler said he was owed. And they had an argument about it. And so Whistler actually painted into the Peacock Room a painting of two peacocks fighting, and one of them has like money around his feet. That's Leyland. That's the sort of greedy industrialist Leyland. And the sort of poor defenseless peacock trying to protect himself, that's Whistler. So this is actually in the guy's house, So the great thing was that the room still exists because it's not, obviously it's not where it was anymore. It's now, and it was recognized as such a great work of art that it was actually taken, wholesale and moved over to America.
I would have liked to have seen how they did that. Take this whole room out and ship it.
I know. Well, there's a lot of history of like, Britain did a lot of removing artworks from various places and sort of, putting them in the British Museum or whatever. But yeah, is not easy. There's also a sort of an art exhibition that is an homage to the Peacock Room, called Filthy Lucre, filthy money, like dirty money, by a guy called Darren Watterson, which is fascinating. It's basically like if you took the Peacock Room and melted it. So it's sort of this distorted, deranged, damaged version of the Peacock Room. And that was on display in London, just before the pandemic. And it goes on display various places, but very interesting exhibition.
Yeah. And we'll jump from James Whistler to Oscar Wilde. You've been very involved with his society.
Yeah, I'm the press officer of the Oscar Wilde Society. I've always liked Oscar Wilde. I don't know how I first encountered him. A lot of people have that epiphany of some kind when they first encounter somebody that they really like, in fiction or whatever. I don't really remember, but I know it was a long time ago. I know that in my first apartment when I was living in LA, I had a life-size poster of Oscar Wilde on the wall. So I've always been interested in Oscar, and especially in Dorian Gray.
And you've done a webinar and also an article about Dorian Gray in comics.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a comics person and have been like my whole life. And I think it's really interesting that basically Dorian Gray was kind of off limits for comics for most of comics history, because it's there's a lot of gay subtext to it. You can do it in a fairly horror film kind of way, but you're missing a lot of it. And then suddenly at around 2006, 2007, there were like 4 big versions of Dorian Gray in comics and in different countries. One was in the US, one was in the UK, and there were a couple in France. So it sort of started there. And now there's more people doing takes on Dorian Gray now in comics. I like to put comics together with other things. I was recently, in October, I went to Pescara a coastal city in Italy, and there was a conference on neo-Victorian decadence, because I like the decadent authors. I'm a member of the British Association of Decadent Studies, not as an academic because I'm not really an academic, but just to go to their conferences and read their publications. And so I gave a talk on decadence in comics, both adaptations of decadent authors like Charles Baudelaire and Huysmans and Jean Laurent and people like that, and Oscar Wilde with Dorian Gray as a decadent work. But then also looking at some aspects of comics that are sort of that lean into decadence in a kind of a surprising way. I realize we've gotten a little bit far from Lovecraft, but I believe Lovecraft has been called a New England decadent. So maybe it's all like full circle, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we discuss all things, and Lovecraft was I don't know if he was a fan of Oscar Wilde, but he did admire some of his work. Especially like the portrait of Dorian Gray.
Yeah. It's funny because the picture of Dorian Gray is, if you read it, if you think about what it's about, it's clearly weird fiction, right? It has a supernatural element to it. And it's from a period, the 1890s that is full of, Dracula and full of weird fiction stuff going on. And yet it never really gets classed there. It's like, because it's a classic with quotes around it, it's sort of in classic literature, and it doesn't really get considered in the sort of weird fiction genre. But I think it really is a piece of weird fiction.
Yeah, it doesn't get talked about much. Not like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or Invisible Man, the other stories.
Well, exactly. And Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has the same theme of Dorian Gray, as sort of the duality of man, and can you split the good and the bad and all that kind of stuff. They're playing with the same things. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is written in a more sort of pulpy, it's not pulp, but it's a slightly more accessible, maybe, language than Dorian Gray. The story's not hard to follow, but it is written in a very flowery, decadent style that puts some people off. And it put off, reviewers at the time. Most people reviewing the book at the time thought it was corrupt. They just thought, why, this is a poisonous book. This is an evil story, and it's written in an evil way. And it came up when Oscar Wilde was tried, about how sort of evil this book was. And now we just, we wouldn't make that association.
I liked how you brought up about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were talking about how a lot of people thought it was in the comic, but no, he was only in the movie.
It's only a movie. And I think, and I do have a theory that is why he never showed up, because he's on the cover. The picture of Dorian Gray is on the cover of the first collection of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in the background. And there's also a page, Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill put pages at the back of the comic with fun, like boys comic puzzles. And there was one about, paint by numbers, Basil Hallward paint by numbers. So, here's an outline of Dorian Gray with little numbers for where you'd put the different colors. And that all looks really normal. And then they show the completed version. And of course, it's the distorted, aged, decrepit, evil version of the picture of Dorian Gray. So they did have him in there, but they never had him he never got into the main story. And my theory is that he might have made it, except the movie was so bad. And the movie was what introduced Dorian Gray into the League. I think the movie's a lot of fun, but it's not a good movie. So therefore, when Alan Moore did Century, which was like a later series of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and he needed a character that was sort of androgynous and could live forever, he picked Orlando by Virginia Woolf. And I sort of think that could have been that Dorian's spot, but Dorian, not because of the film. So Orlando got that role.
And I think there's also like a Witchblade comic that has Dorian Gray in
There
it.
is there's a Witchblade comic. There's a few French comics. There's more stuff coming out now. I don't know why. And It may be partly because there was that film in 2009 of Dorian Gray. And anytime you make a movie out of something, it sort of ups people's cognizance of it.
And jumping even further down the rabbit hole, you did a lot of stuff for the comics journals.
Yeah.
So a lot of big 90s artists of the time.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really liked writing for the Comics Journal. The only thing that was hard about it was that they specialized in sort of career defining interviews. So if you read Comics Journal, which is a magazine, started I think in the 70s, and it was like the serious magazine of comics journalism for a long, long time, and published by Fantagraphics Books, which is still around. And they would have these interviews that would run for 30, 40 pages in the magazine. So they were hugely long interviews. When you did one of these, it wasn't like a normal, when you interview somebody for a magazine article or anything, it's usually half an hour, maybe it's an hour. These would be like 2 or 3 hour long interviews that you would do, and usually over the phone, because they didn't have budget to fly you off to wherever the artist was. And so back then you had to tape record the whole thing so you could get it verbatim, and then you had to transcribe it. And if you guys have done any transcription, it's like the most soul-numbing job there is, because it uses very little of your brain power, and yet you can't multitask. There's nothing, you can't even listen to music. You have to just be writing down these things and then stopping the tape and then doing it over. I know that there's software that does it now, but there wasn't back then. So that was hard, but I did really enjoy meeting and talking to the people. Charles Burns, I did. The Hernandez brothers, who I knew, I did. I did one with Dan Clowes, who created Ghost World, and still very active today. I did Mike Mignola, but not for Comics Journal. I think I did him for Comics Scene magazine. I got one request. There was one time where somebody wanted me to interview them, and that person was an independent cartoonist named Dame Darcy. And Darcy's not that common a name, so she knew that there was a Darcy for the Comics Journal, and she thought it would be really funny if we did the interview, and in the Q&A it was just Darcy colon then what she said, and then Darcy colon what I said. So that's going to be a little bit too confusing, but yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Dame Darcy. She did so with Alan Moore. That thing was like Meat Cakes. I think it was
Meat Cake. That was her alone. But yeah, I think she may have worked with him later. Yeah, no, she was a very interesting person. And I remember her telling me about how she'd seen ghosts, and she was very into what became more popular later. She was very into murder ballads. Those sort of songs from like the Civil War era and around the American folk songs. And there's a lot of English folk songs too that are about, I took my love down by the lake and there I threw her in, and that kind of stuff. A strange song type that I think maybe Nick Cave still does murder ballads. I don't think they're that popular a genre anymore.
You don't hear them. And
no.
You've also done writing for another magazine called Chap.
Yeah, Chap, or it used to be called The Chap, is a humor magazine from England, but it's sort of vintage and humor. And the original conceit was sort of, let's get back to the time of like the 30s and 40s and 50s, where men wore suits and nice clothes, and talked about, that's pipping, old chap, that's pipping, and it sort of took off, and it was part of this sort of retro thing that happened, and it led to a lot of people having, a lot of facial hair for men really started to take off. I think probably led to Movember at some point. So I wouldn't say the Chap was the only thing, but I think it was one of the first sort of cultural things that was going on that led to this sort of retro vintage scene that exploded in the 2000s.
I saw a phrase, it wasn't used for Chap, but it was like for the new Sheridan Club. They call themselves retro dandies.
Retro dandies, yeah, and anarcho dandies. And there's a lot of these people in the US too. There's Dandy Wellington, who's a jazz performer out of New York, who's a really interesting guy. And he has a phrase that it's vintage fashion, not vintage it's like ideas or something. Because of course, when you harken back to a previous era, 30s or 40s or 50s, you're talking about it, in America or in England, talking about a pretty repressive time, both in terms of, minority rights, in terms of women's rights, in terms of all sorts of things. So just because you want to wear a nice hat and smoke a pipe and have a big mustache and look like you're from that period doesn't mean that you endorse, you know, uh, you know, refusing people the right to vote or things like that. So you can like the fashions without being an old-fashioned values kind of person.
So, do you consider yourself a retro dandy then?
I do. And I have two modes of clothing. I have my country clothes, which, country music, that sort of Western style, which I love, which is surprisingly hard to find in London, or perhaps not that surprisingly hard to find in London. And then sort of dandyish clothing, a lot of scarves and hats and, double-breasted suits and things like that. I love all that. I don't know why, but I always have.
Have you always had the beard, or is that something you just did recently?
No, I never had facial hair when I lived in America. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and when I met my wife, then we moved to San Francisco, and we lived there for like 17 years. And then we moved back to England in 2010 because my wife is English. And when we moved back, I just thought, I wonder if I could grow one of those funny mustaches like those guys had, those handlebar mustaches. And I never took it off after that. I have dreams that I've shaved it off. I have so many dreams where I look in the mirror and I go, oh my God, why did I do that? That's part of my identity. But no, in reality, it's only since I've been in England, but now most people that know me, that's all they know is like big mustache. And the funny thing about having a big mustache and a goatee is every culture, every Western culture has some association with that. So if you're American, when you see that, you might think Old West, right? Like Wyatt Earp, he had a huge mustache. Buffalo Bill had a mustache and a goatee. Wild Bill Hickok had a big mustache. All those people had mustaches. It always drives me crazy when you see old Western movies and everybody's clean shaven. Take a look at the people back then. They all had mustaches. And then in England, you get the whole sort of, the 19th century when, everybody had, other than Oscar Wilde, everybody had mustaches. Whistler had a big mustache. In Germany, you've got people like, the Kaiser, maybe not the greatest association, but there you go. There's, and then Pancho Villa or Zapata, every culture has, all these Western cultures had a period where mustaches were really cool, which they are not really anymore. But it's still fun.
It seems like, that you can't have a mustache. You just have to have like a mustache and a beard or a goatee, with it.
Yeah, well, I do. I think the big secret that a lot of guys find out when they're older is that as your jawline starts to go, if you've got a little goatee, it sort of hides that, gives you a little bit more shape in the face. I'm letting on one of the man secrets. You might want to edit this out later so the women don't find out that's why we're doing this. But there you go.
We'll make that exclusive, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a paywall for that.
For the initiates or the cultists, whatever you guys do, with the secret parts of the interviews.
Yeah. So I guess your day job is with FICO.
That's right.
You're a marketing analytic.
Yep. I do marketing for EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa out here. I cannot fix your FICO score. Don't ask, because I know that's the next question. But no, I can't fix your FICO score. But we are that FICO.
Yeah. So do you get booed or cheered for being that type of FICO?
People are usually kind of curious. The only time that anybody ever really comments on it is when you go through customs. When you're going through customs into America, and how they ask you questions, and they'll say, "Where do you work?" I say FICO, and they go, like the FICO score. Yeah. Oh, okay. They do look a little suspicious. Like maybe they didn't get the mortgage rate they wanted because of you. You get a little bit of that.
I saw a video of you at one of the, I guess, conferences where you had a Harry Potter wand.
Yeah. Well, we had a conference this year where the party was at Universal, the big park there in Orlando, and Harry Potter World was one of the areas that we could go into. My son is a huge Harry Potter fan. Me, I liked reading them, to the kids. But unfortunately, when those books started coming out was precisely the time when my son said, I'm too old to have you reading books to me anymore. Because I thought those were great, but no, you couldn't do that. But I thought, oh yeah, I'll get this wand and I'll make it. I'm the only person at FICO who has ever tried to expense a Harry Potter wand. But I have to say that I've used it. I've justified the expense by using it several times at events since then. So
Well,
if they're listening to this, it wasn't a boondoggle. Honestly, that was money well spent, FICO.
this be another paywall moment right here.
Yeah. That's a blackmail moment where you can go, listen, he's not really using the wand for work.
And one important question: are you a Frankenstein or a zombie?
My Frankenstein, I want to be a zombie. So this is a question that we posed to people about social media. And we were trying to get people at the company to do more on social media. And I do a lot on social media, but mainly because I'm the Arkham Hillbilly. I got to do something. But people at work, we wanted to get them to be sharing information more. And it's a great way to network, as I think everybody knows. So we made this analogy of, are you a Frankenstein or a zombie? Because Frankenstein, yeah, he threw the girl in the lake. He can fight off a few villagers, and that kind of thing. But really, he's one guy. He's walking around trying to do stuff. One guy. If you can walk pretty fast, you can get away from Frankenstein's monster, right? Zombies? No, because there's never one zombie. It's like when you see an ant in your house, there's never one ant, right? There's like a million ants right behind that ant, like hiding somewhere. So zombies is the same thing. Zombies are like social media. You infect other people, they infect other people. So your ideas get out and get out and get out and get out and spread. So that was our zombie thing. The zombie language thing, that connection I think is interesting because have you guys seen a film called Pontypool?
Yes.
Okay. Love that movie.
Yeah.
And there's a new film. It's actually a series out now called Hot Skull, which I've not seen yet. You guys seen that?
I started it, but I haven't finished it.
Yeah, I started it. I don't know. It wasn't clicking for me.
Yeah, well, I have to check it out because my daughter is a linguist, so she studied linguistics and psychology. And so I was reading the description of this series. It's like, oh, there's in a dystopian world where, this disease is spread through language, the army has to call up a linguist to help them solve this. I thought that's great. That's great for linguists because they had that movie, about the aliens where they had to decode Amy Adams had to decode the language. So I think linguists are having a moment,
right?
They can help you with the aliens, and now they can help you with the zombies. So it's a good time to be a linguist.
And since you've lived in Britain, going back to Lovecraft, Lovecraft is known for his Britishisms in his works and all that. And I was wondering, is there anything in Lovecraft's work that would strike you as being American?
Anything in his work that strikes me as being American, I think it's profoundly American. Because I think Lovecraft's big idea that we are in specks on a speck in the universe, that there's no such thing as sort of galactic morality, right? That there's no evil or good. There's no Manichaean universe. It's not God versus the devil. There's no Christianity. It's just these things that really don't care about us very much, but we care about them because we're trying to get power from them. We're trying not to be killed by them or stepped on by them or whatever. He has a very nihilistic sort of existential view of the universe. I think that's pretty American. It's not to say that there aren't Europeans that had those kinds of ideas. They were not English people that had those ideas. I think some of the Germans, German philosophers had some of that nihilistic, or somebody like Jean-Paul Sartre, people that have this very dark, bleak, atheistic view of what's going on in the universe. But the New World and the sort of melting pot of ideas and everything that was America, I think it's a very American idea, and it sort of goes in a way with capitalism. I'm not sure Lovecraft would have appreciated that, but this idea that capitalism, it's not about control from the top. it's about everybody for themselves, and it's about survival of the fittest, and it's an amoral sort of system. And I think, America's sort of the epitome of the capitalist culture, and I think Lovecraft's ideas sort of fit in with that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's a hard song to write, though.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's a ditty that goes with that sentiment, but I do think that.
I want to hear those rhyme schemes for that one there.
Yeah, I know. Dystopian. That's going to be, fallopian maybe, but that's going to be that's a hard thing to do.
Write that down quick.
Yeah, write that down. Exactly. Don't you guys steal that now.
Well, we'll give you a time limit. We'll hear a song in a few months. We're going to jump on it.
Oh yeah, when I hear that banger coming out with the dystopian and fallopian, I'm going to go, hey, wait a minute.
I guess our word for the episode is alpaca pox. What is that?
Oh, the alpaca pox. Oh, okay. Now you're talking. Well, alpaca pox is like, remember monkeypox?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that, only it's spread by alpacas. So the whole alpaca thing came, I assume that you fellows, being the Lovecraft academicians that you are, all saw The Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage?
Yes.
Okay. Did you like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm getting some ambiguity there.
No, I liked it. I did. Okay. I thought it was pretty well done.
Okay. So I thought it was well done. I thought it was fun. Like all those Lovecraft things, most of them have to veer off the source material, but I thought it stayed it's certainly a lot closer to Lovecraft than the episodes in Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities that were inspired by Lovecraft. But in that movie, there was a lot of alpacas. Probably more alpacas than you ever saw in a movie before. I think it was like a big break for the alpaca, for big alpaca, the alpaca industry. So big alpaca packed that film with alpacas. And, JT from my band, he saw that movie, thought that movie was going to be a big hit. And he thought when everybody saw that movie, they was going to want alpaca. So what he did was he went and bought a whole bunch of alpacas, But of course, when that movie it came out in like March 2020. So as soon as the movie comes out, like everybody's locked down, nobody saw the movie. So it wasn't a big hit. So JT stuck with all these alpacas. So then he got the bright idea that he had to get rid of them, and he started the Alpaca Exchange, JT's Alpaca Exchange. I think he might have gotten the idea for the name from the Buffalo Exchange, which is a secondhand store in America. But anyway, so you could trade anything for these alpacas because he's got some money. You could just drive in, give him like an old Porter Wagner album that you already had one of, and somebody give it to you. Give him that, you can take away an alpaca. And so we had this thing about the alpacas. And then it just so happened that last year we went to stay, my family, in the summer at a holiday place, Airbnb house in rural England, where they had an alpaca farm. And it was such a weird coincidence because we'd already made the joke in the Arkham Billy videos about all the alpacas. So we went to this farm and I said, okay, we got to film a video for JT's Alpaca Exchange. So we did, which people like because I don't sing in it. So that's a plus. And then also there's all these actual live alpacas with JT doing his bit about the Alpaca Exchange. And so then I think some people, him and some of the other members of the Nashville Shamblers, caught the alpaca pox off of them. And so that was a problem.
Gotcha.
And on that note, we'll wrap things up. David Richard and Mr. Sullivan, I see the stars are no longer right, and we must cease all discussions until we meet again next month. 30 plus minutes of H.P. Lovecraft is sponsored by the Miss Botanic Hoedown. Eric Zan and the Randolph Carter family will be on the same stage for the first time ever. This podcast was created in association with LovecraftPod.com and Logan Speculative Fiction Group, with the help from Logan County Public Library and the Great Old Ones. Special thanks to Katie Tyson for answering the call of Cthulhu, and Joshua Dukes for hiding in the dark forest. Until we meet again, may you avoid Princess Cthulhu wants to know her father's phone number.